Hello, everyone. I must welcome you all to our webinar series, Future You, Set Your Career Compass Right with Experts Insight. And I'm Kalyani, your host for today's webinar. So today our topic is how to build a career in supply chain consulting. And in this webinar, you'll find out about the roles and responsibilities of a supply chain consultant. What are the different jobs? What are the different roles in supply chain management, career progression of the speaker, and how an MBA played a role, why is supply chain consulting the most sought after career in supply chain and operations, key skills to excel, the kind of profile the recruiters are looking for, crucial tips on profile building, and more. So let's welcome our speaker today. We have Jinay Nagori. He's a management consultant at supply chain and operations at Accenture Strategy, and he's an alumnus of SPJIMR. Welcome, and thank you so much, Jinay and Nagori, for being here for the session.
Thank you. Thank you, Kalyani, so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, IMS, for doing this. I will try to give my 2 bits of gyan to
Yes.
everyone, but
Yeah. Yeah, because supply chain is a very, very niche, function. And on top of it, we'll be covering more from a consulting point of view. So obviously, it's something that is, we have never covered in Future You. So yeah, so let's start from your career progression. So
okay.
could you tell us about your career progression from Glenmark Pharmaceuticals to an MBA and then now at Accenture? And also, if you could tell us something about your learnings, what are the things that you would have liked to do differently, or the things that you did right and it really worked for you? So yeah, from that aspect, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, just to give a little bit of background, right, to set in the context, I am
Yes.
a BTech in Pharmaceutical Sciences and Technology from Institute of Chemical Technology. So, effectively, I am a pharmaceutical engineer.
Yeah.
I know it's a rare degree, but basically, it's kind of um, I would say something in between pharma and chemical engineering, right?
Hmm.
So with that background, I went into Glenmark. In Glenmark, I joined them as a management trainee,
Hmm.
worked on to become an AM, assistant manager, and then worked there for 3 years. Now there, my role was first I started at the plant. I was there for 6 months in Goa. Then I moved on to the corporate office, and in corporate office, I did a bunch of things. One of them tasks was to assess, or rather evaluate, assist.
Hmm.
There was a new plant that was being set up in North America, okay, in US. So the whole idea of putting up a new plant, why do you want to do that? How does business get impacted by it? Um, what are the products that you intend to launch? And everything around that, right? That kind of got me thinking that I don't want to stick to only the technical stuff. Of course there is some level of technical expertise and you can build a career in that, but that is where the pivot happened, right, for me, that I want to do something on the management side of things. I didn't even think to do something on the business side of things. I just felt that I should get into management much more faster than I would otherwise. Say it would take me 8-10 years, right? So that's when I thought, okay, let's see if MBA works out.
Hmm.
uh, and then automatically, because I had an inclination, Glenmark allowed me to become like an internal consultant, which strengthened that belief all the more that this is
Hmm.
what I want to do. I want to
Okay.
identify problems and I want to solve them. So then, by the end of that 3 years at Glenmark, I was clear I want to do an MBA and I want to get into consulting. And
Hmm.
of course, I liked my profile. I liked pharma. So I thought maybe someday I would want to get or work around this particular field. That's where MBA
Okay.
happened. Obviously,
Hmm.
everybody has to go through
Yeah.
the same competitive exams, clear the interviews, get an admit, all that. So I think that part is probably the
Hmm.
same for everyone, right?
Correct.
But once I got into SP,
Hmm.
then I went into SP with very clear focus that these are the things that I want to do, and these are the things that I want to try.
Hmm.
um, I wanted to take up very strong positions of responsibilities. I thought I've learned enough. I've done a lot of I mean, I studied during my BTech. People don't, but I actually
Hmm.
did. I wanted to learn. I've
Okay.
done a lot of work, and now I'm very clear on what I want. I want to explore more on the management side of things, administrative side of things, and
Hmm.
MBA is going to be the great place for me to learn.
Hmm.
and learn by doing, right? Not just theory. So that is where my focus was. Very clear, want to get into consulting. Thankfully, did get into. You know how B school placements are; they can be extremely random. But I was fortunate
Yeah.
enough to get into consulting.
Hmm.
And when I joined here, I joined in the supply chain and operations practice. They probably aligned it because it made sense. I was doing a PGDM in operations and supply chain. So
Okay.
once I got here, I saw what's happening. What is the cutting edge stuff? Been there with the firm for almost 3+ years now, enjoying the work
Hmm.
that I'm doing. So that is typically the things that I've done in the past 5, 8 odd years.
Hmm.
The things that I enjoyed, or I think I did well, was I was clearer on what things I want from the next 2 or 3 years. I
Okay.
am not a person who thinks 10 years ahead, 15 years
Hmm.
ahead. um I feel, of course, people do that and they excel well. I just feel that I don't know what's going to happen after 10 years. Why bother even thinking so far
Hmm.
ahead? I
Correct.
want to plan next 2 3 years only.
Hmm.
So it helped, and I was very clear what I want from the next 2 years. So I was focusing on that. I was focused. But what I think I should have done better is I should have studied. I did not study during my MBA.
Hmm.
It's not a problem,
Okay. Hmm.
but I was so focused on the positions of responsibilities and other kind of things that I want.
Hmm.
I felt that I should have done a little more there, because we think MBA is so much about polishing and so much about getting the best out of you, but you can't do justice to your jobs if you don't know the basics,
Right. Huh.
right? um, in my case, thankfully, we had a lot of mentorship, we had a lot of help, and there was a lot of people available in the firm who used to guide us and give us a lot of opportunities. There were a lot of trainings and learnings and all those things happening. So I did not suffer so much, I would say. But
Okay.
yeah, please do everything that you want from that, but make sure that you do study a little, do the basic,
Yeah.
get the basics right. It's
Hmm.
important,
Okay.
especially in supply chain where
Hmm.
it's so logical. If you don't understand the basics, you'll never get to what is there in the advanced pieces of things.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
yeah.
So, okay, before we get into the roles and responsibilities of a supply chain consultant, can we talk a little bit about the difference between, say, a management consultant and a supply chain consultant? How different are these project-wise? The duration of each project, roughly, as in the average, and how different are these two? If you can also take an example or two. Uh, yeah.
Sure. All right.
Hmm.
um okay, let me put it this way.
Hmm.
We all are management consultants. Even I am technically a
Yes,
management consultant.
correct. Huh.
But where things start differentiating is
Hmm.
in Accenture and in a lot of other firms,
Hmm.
you are generally aligned to a particular practice. Okay.
Okay.
Um, uh, Whereas in strategy consulting firms, you are typically trying to be a generalist, at least in the initial few years,
Okay.
and afterwards you start specializing. Everybody has to specialize in
Right.
consulting. While they say it's a generalist role, you do
Hmm.
strategy and all that, you will have to specialize in something or the other,
Okay.
right? Your worth only increases when you specialize, because you need to have a decent breadth of knowledge across, but you
Okay.
need to have depth in one particular thing for you to excel, right?
Okay.
For us, that depth kind of starts a little earlier. Okay.
Okay. In
um,
supply chain.
in supply chain consulting,
Okay.
so there are multiple practices. There could be one for um, say something like marketing, so customer sales and service, something like that. There
Right.
could be
Hmm.
something for talent and organization,
Right.
basically HR. Finance, there could be one practice. Similarly, we have something for supply chain and operations.
Okay.
um, so for us, the domain is the entire supply chain.
Hmm.
Supply chain itself is very, very vast, right?
Okay.
There are multiple things that we do. um, we are generally aligned to one particular sub practice within a practice. For example, I am into planning,
Hmm.
right? So demand planning, supply planning, production planning, all those kind of things, right?
Okay.
How much do I want do how much should I be producing so that I sell? How should I get the materials so that I'm able to produce those many? How do I get them out uh, to the customers? All those kind of planning related stuff is what we do.
Hmm.
How different is it from typical consulting is going to be like um, typical strategy consulting projects are going to be like 3 weeks to 3 months to max like 6 months
Okay.
typically. um, a lot of supply chain consulting projects are going to be somewhere around 3 months to 6 months to a year to maybe 2 years.
Okay.
Some programs as run as much as like say 3 years, 4 years, 5 years as well. These are very very long, very very engaging, and how do I say it? The clients have a lot of say in these projects. So we are
Okay.
not working as consultant clients, though there that relationship
Hmm.
always exists. But we are working as one team to transform one piece of the business for them, right?
Okay.
So we will do the strategy bit right in the beginning of the project.
Hmm.
Then we will also hold their hands, do the implementation
Hmm.
for them, get the
Okay.
results, make them understand what is being done, hand it over to them so that they can run it sustainably. So it's
Hmm.
like from one of the end of the spectrum where you understand what the problem is, you bring out a solution for them, but you just don't give them solution and I'm done. You sit with
Okay.
them. You can't go scot free after just giving a suggestion. You
Correct.
have to
Yeah.
sit with them,
Okay.
implement that suggestion, get the results out, save those millions of dollars that they want to be
Hmm.
saved,
Hmm.
and then hand them over so that they can on an annual basis keep doing that,
Okay.
right? So it's a lot more engaging in from that perspective,
Hmm.
from the business perspective.
Okay. So clearly, in supply chain consulting, you are actually also involved in that project at a, at a physical level, not just in strategy and just finishing it off
Yes,
and
yes,
moving on to the next one. So this is
yes,
like, you're deep diving in
yes, yes,
each and
exactly.
every, okay, in each and
Yes,
every
you are
project.
going to deep
Okay.
dive,
Ah.
and
Mm.
your interest lies in the customers involvement, their benefit that they're getting and everything. So you might be remote, you might be at the client location, it's going to be a hybrid of those, but we will make sure that their processes are better aligned.
Mm.
They have a new say for example, the piece that we specialize in, we will do a lot of digital transformation for them. And
Okay.
probably this is the most uh, running thing that's going on right now in consulting, right? They
Mm.
Every client wants to go through a digital transformation, of course, for
Yes.
various parts of the business.
Mm.
COVID, was a huge enabler from technology standpoint. So
Correct.
it's not just about putting a system or recommending a system. You recommend a system, you sit with them, see their processes, understand them, see how can that be put with a system in place, marry those two together,
Mm.
um, implement that, help them bring about new wows, as we call it, ways of working, right?
Mm.
How do you work with a new system in place? What are the things that they need not do now? What are
Mm.
the things they will have to do now? How
Okay.
does their life simplify? What is the benefit? How much money are they saving? How much time are they saving? Those kind of analysis as well. And then finally you train them and then hand it over,
Okay.
right? So it's a long engagement typically.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah. So now let's talk about the roles and responsibilities specifically. So, and also if you can talk about the different roles that are there, and as in you just don't become a supply chain management as a, just in 1 year or so, right? You need to keep working. So where do you start, and how do you become a supply chain consultant? In an organization post an MBA.
Okay, so
Yeah.
post an MBA, it's relatively simple.
Okay.
um, you get into these large consulting firms that are out there, you know um, it's supply chain consulting, while it is a piece in itself,
Hmm.
Getting into a consulting firm is going to be as similar as getting into any other consults, right? You will have to
Okay.
go through the same process.
Okay.
You will have case interviews, you will have guesstimates,
Hmm.
maybe a few questions around your experience and stuff. What
Hmm.
do you understand about it? So getting into a consulting firm, I would say after an MBA, it's going to be same as getting into any other consulting firm. I mean, getting for supply chain is as good as getting into a consulting firm itself. It's
Hmm.
after that, when you're aligned to a particular practice,
Hmm.
that is going to be your domain of work and the domain of expertise that you'll build over a period of time,
Okay.
right? So getting into this firm after an MBA, it's probably the same.
Okay. So, what are the different job roles in supply chain management apart from okay, supply chain consultant? What are the other things that you can get after you have done a MBA in supply chain?
Oh, there are plenty.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's been there for a while, but
Huh.
COVID really helped, bring
Correct.
supply chain into
Yeah.
absolute spotlight.
Hmm.
um, Suddenly people have started realizing the importance, and a lot of people are going towards it. It's a chicken and egg story, right? When more
Hmm.
people start seeking for such roles, a good number of roles also start trickling in.
Right.
And it's a fairly vast field, I would say. There
Okay.
are a lot of different kinds of roles possible, and the best way to understand this, and sorry for being repetitive, but
Hmm.
you need to understand the value chain. If you understand the value chain, you automatically understand what are the possible tasks. If you understand the
Okay.
tasks, you automatically understand what are the kind of roles that are out there.
Hmm.
You will,
Hmm.
right, starting from something like procurement. So
Hmm.
procurement, sourcing strategy, those kind of things. How do I get the best vendors onboarded? How do I understand that there is resiliency, I'm not dependent on one vendor? How do I automate those kind of purchases that is happening? All those kind of things, those typically is one domain, or one part of your supply chain domain. Then comes to okay, I've got everything. Now I need to plan first. I've been selling XYZ amount for a particular product, right? Now I need to know what is how much am I going to sell in the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 5 years, right?
Hmm.
Because if I know how much am I selling, whether it's going up or down, accordingly I have to look if my capacity is enough or not to produce that, if I have enough people to help me produce that, if I have enough factories to help me do that, right? So that kind of level of understanding, planning, this is typically what we do. um, so sales and sales forecasting, demand planning.
Hmm.
Similarly, supply planning. Okay, do I have enough materials to fulfill whatever the demand is coming in? Do I have enough people? Do I have enough machinery? What is my utilization ratios? How am I going to suffice this? If I can't supply this using my material, can I buy that from somebody else and sell it under my name? Those
Hmm.
kind of things is what you'll typically do in supply chain planning, right?
Hmm.
Okay, this is about supply. Going a little more
Okay.
deeper,
Hmm.
I'm at the manufacturing side. I need to produce XYZ amount in the next 1 month, 3 months, 5 months. How am I going to do that? How am I going to
Okay.
schedule all my batches?
Hmm.
Can I do things to improve my overall line efficiencies, optimization? Those kind of things are also possible. Okay,
Right.
I've produced them.
Huh.
I need to store that somewhere, right? How do I manage my inventory? What is the safety stock that I should be putting in? What are the norms that I need to put in at various
Correct.
nodes? That
Hmm.
is another role. Okay,
Okay.
then there is
Hmm. Got it.
manufacturing, the
Hmm.
age old things. How do I get things working on the
Hmm.
shop floor, get things done?
Hmm.
Okay, people have this huge concern after an MBA. Why am I supposed to do operations planning? Why should I
Yeah.
get into manufacturing?
Yeah, and
I've
also,
been on the shop floor already.
yeah, and also this is also bringing me to that other question that I was about to ask you is, while you were telling us all this, can you also tell us, like, a lot of people use supply chain management and operations synonymously, which I don't think it is true, right? As in, there must be something that is differentiating
Yes,
the two, right?
yes.
So yeah, so if you can, while you were talking also about the traditional, and is it like supply chain, is it operations more traditional, on the floor, supply chain is less, what is it? Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's a
Hmm.
good question to add on to the
Yeah.
answer that I was trying to
Yeah.
build.
Huh.
Um, uh, See, it it is fairly um, colloquially interchangeably used.
Yes.
Okay,
Huh.
um, of course there are going to be differences, and typically supply chain is more about how do I get material from one, transform that material and getting out to the customer. That entire value chain is going to have what is your supply chain. From
Correct.
that definition,
Hmm.
operations is going to be a part of it. Operations is
Okay.
typically going to be around manufacturing and enablement of manufacturing,
Okay.
right? Of course, there are a lot more, and I'm super simplifying everything for getting the point across.
Hmm.
Um, but it's fairly interchangeably used, I would say,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Right. Um, but yes, there is a difference
Okay.
typically, but you need to know both. If you want
Okay.
what is in it for me from that,
Ha
the
ha.
answer that I'm, if
Yeah.
somebody thinks, okay, Jinay is answering this, what is in it for me, you need to
Hmm.
know both, in a sense, right? It will go
Okay.
hand in hand, almost
Okay.
always,
So when you're
right?
studying it in the B school, you are studying both
Both.
the things, right? Because
Yes.
both are actually going hand in hand.
Yes.
Is there something called as like the entry level to a senior level in supply chain consulting, like how the trajectory is, and also how much of a chance there is for a supply chain consultant to become a CEO or a CXO of a company? Yeah.
That's a very difficult question to answer, but see, to
Okay,
answer your
first the growth
yeah,
trajectory.
yeah. So
Yeah.
to answer the first question,
Yeah.
it's it's going to be very similar to what any consulting firm has, right? You
Okay.
start at an analyst associate level, something around that. You become a
Okay.
consultant, senior consultant, manager,
Hmm.
basically an engagement manager. Then you become probably a senior manager,
Hmm.
or then probably a associate director, director, whatever levels that your consulting firm has. Then you
Correct.
make a partner. Once you make a
Uh,
partner, then there's a new journey that starts, basically, right? Your roles and responsibilities keep on changing. But typically, how things work is, in the initial years, you are more of a doer, right?
hmm.
You're being told what
Okay.
needs to be done. You're doing those kind of things while you're learning how to handle clients, stakeholder management, how to put your point across, um, how to get things done as well. As and when you get more and more senior, there are junior people there on the team.
Hmm.
How do you guide them? How do you support them? How do you get things done? Um, ensure that the delivery to the client is never impacted, irrespective. Consulting is, you will always have people going out of a team and coming in, new people coming in. You need to
Hmm.
make sure that the delivery is not impacted. So right from doing to doing and helping others people do, you go that journey to reach, say, an engagement manager. Once you reach at a managerial position, you are you're leading a small function within that project, or within that consulting piece that you're running.
Right.
You're helping the
Uh,
client, you're understanding their problems, you're translating it for people to work on, you're also
hmm.
working, right? You just suddenly don't become a person who just gives out orders. In
Yeah.
consulting, you will always have some level of um, individual contribution. It's almost always going to be there.
Okay.
As you become more and more senior, you need to start selling. Now in consulting, this is a little different. As in, where you get more and more senior, you need to also learn to sell. And when I say sell, it's not a
Hmm.
typical sales, it's basically engaging with the client, understanding their issues,
Correct.
and then building a solution around that. And of course, there will be multiple consulting firms bidding, so you need to
Hmm.
learn that as well. How do I make my a proposal as probably the most beneficial one, right?
Right.
You need to
Yeah.
manage the price, then the P&L, or not P&L, but typically finance related things.
Hmm.
How am I going to create my entire staffing?
Hmm.
Which people should I be staffing? Accordingly, I manage the budgets.
Hmm.
How much should I be probably pitching to the client where it makes a reasonable a bid to the client? All those kind of things start coming in. And then once you reach
Hmm.
partner, of
Hmm.
course, it's more about relationships with your client. How, what problems are they facing? How am I going to solve their problems? How am I going to build a meaningful relationship between my firm and their firm, so that we
Correct.
have a long engagement, right? It's not just about one project. You will have
Hmm.
to keep holding their hands, help them solve multiple problems, right?
Right.
Help them
Yeah.
transform,
Correct.
become
Hmm.
bigger, better companies in the world. So
Right.
it's that,
Yeah.
from doing to helping to managing to actually solving problems for
Hmm.
the client,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
So
And what about the CEO CX of it?
see,
Yeah.
you can very easily get into absolutely amazing, very senior supply chain related roles,
Yeah.
obviously, right?
Mm.
um, there are instances where supply chain professionals have become CEOs, and I'm
Oh,
going to
yeah.
I'm going to take a name which is probably
Mm.
well known to everyone. Tim Cook
Mm.
was in supply chain before he became the CEO of Apple, right?
Okay.
Right. So it's not that
Mm.
it's not
Mm.
possible. It's lesser heard. Typically,
Yeah.
CFOs,
Yeah.
CMOs make
Mm.
CEOs
Correct.
typically, but
Typically.
it's and
But
with
mm,
things changing in today's world, I think supply chain is getting the importance that was always due.
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
They
Correct.
had a seat at the table, but their seat somehow is counting more and more now.
Yes.
Right? It's
Mm.
not just about
Mm.
being able to sell or managing the funds. How am I going to sell? Because
Right.
if you improve your supply chain, it
Yes.
directly impacts your bottom
In
line.
fact.
you
Correct.
you need to understand the finance related stuff. And
Absolutely.
when you improve your supply chain, you also look at how can I sell better, how can I make my products be more available. You can sell,
Mm.
you can do marketing, all that you want, but if it's not there out there on the shelves, customer will go, I wanted to
Exactly.
buy this, I could not
But
find it, I'll
yeah.
buy something else.
Correct.
Loyalty broken.
Absolutely.
Right? So
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it's it has been relatively lesser, but
Huh.
it is definitely out there
Correct.
possible, and probably it will only improve over a period of time.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Tell me something. How much of a technical background is important in supply chain? And while you were taking this question, if you can also talk about like maybe three hard skills that are required for this field. I think you've already said three, or I think you've already mentioned two soft skills that are required. One is, I think, problem solving. Problem solving could be both, I think, and also handling clients, understanding them, and all that. So have a better one-on-one conversation with
Typically,
the client.
stakeholder management,
Yeah, yeah.
extremely important.
Okay, so hardcore skills, how much of technical background? What if somebody doesn't have a technical background but has done an MBA and wants to be extremely passionate about this field? Can they?
See, uh, if you are somebody who's extremely passionate about it, you would
mm,
have done something. It need not be
ah,
work. I mean, getting a job
okay,
in the field is partially what your capability is, partially what the luck goes, right? You may not
correct.
get the job that you want, but
Mm,
having said that, if you are passionate enough, you would have exposed yourself to a lot of things that are out there.
mm,
When you're doing your MBA, you will focus a lot more on those subjects to understand it better.
okay.
You will want to take up internships,
Mm,
which will help you understand that domain better.
correct.
You can, and in today's world, there are plenty of internships opportunities that you get outside your B school internships as well. You
Mm,
can do those kind of things as well. You can take up a lot of courses for you to understand. So
mm,
technical know-how,
yeah,
it's not mandatory, but it
yeah.
will be a huge plus. So
Okay,
understanding of the field that you're trying to get into, and this is not supply chain specific, anything, right?
okay. Mm,
Definitely helps.
okay.
um, if you want to get into consulting, not just supply chain consulting, consulting in
Mm,
general, you need to have good Excel and PPT skills.
mm,
Even
okay.
for us,
And in
we are
supply chain consulting, you definitely need as well. So
yes.
this is another hard
So
skills you need. Yeah.
so if you're
Excel
in
sheet.
supply chain consulting,
Yeah.
uh, you need not always be doing only PPT,
Correct.
right?
Huh.
You need not be always doing analysis. There's a lot of
Mm,
other things as well, but this is still a very core part of the consulting work that we do. You also need to understand, and I'm trying to marry the first and second point, right,
mm,
where you need to do technical know-how and the Excel. You need to start understanding the various important uh, functionalities that are there. For example, as good as statistics, you need to know,
mm.
understand a little bit of statistics, because if you want to get
Okay.
into something like planning, there are going to be various statistical models which are used for forecasting. There could
Okay.
be various statistical models for your inventory safety stock calculations. Those,
Right.
I'm getting
Yeah.
very specific, but what I'm
Correct.
trying to put across is you need to understand statistics. Very
Mm,
basic, covered in your MBA, probably first semester itself, quantitative
mm.
methods,
Yeah.
right? But just don't pass those subjects. You need to at
Mm,
least understand the logic. You need not. get an A. But and please do understand that logic which is out there.
Mm, mm,
And in today's supply chain consulting world, uh, this is an absolute optional thing. But if you have, it's a huge plus. Please
right.
try to understand technology.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
Supply chain is no longer the supply chain of the 80s or the 90s.
Right.
It is an amalgamation of pure supply chain understanding processes and technology. Technology, I can't
Okay.
stress more on the fact that how important technology today has become.
Mm,
Um, if you understand the likes of technical architecture which is out there, because see, understand, um, there will be some parts of supply chain where you're on the shop floor and getting things done. There is a
mm,
lot of part of supply chain which you're sitting on your system,
right.
on your laptop, and doing things, right?
Correct.
A lot of
Yeah.
planning, a lot of procurement, a lot of things will be on the system, for which
Mm,
you will use very, very typical high end cutting edge softwares and platforms. It's not expected that you know that. That is something that you learn on the job. But
mm,
if you're having an appreciation of technology, an appreciation of how these systems work, how these different systems which house different kinds of data talk to each other,
correct.
um, understanding of the flow of data that's
Mm,
coming in, getting transformed, getting you the output, all this understanding and appreciation, if you have it, it will add a huge plus. I
mm.
did not have this when I got in, and it's that's why I'm saying it's not a necessity, but it's a huge plus.
Okay. But in soft skills for supply chain, a lot of people think like, okay, you don't need because you're not really talking too much with the people. But I mean,
No,
negotiating and all that. But in
no,
supply chain
no.
consulting, so
See,
yeah. So what are the soft skills that
uh,
you one must have?
it's a if that is the case, it's a wrong notion that
Huh.
somebody who's in sales and marketing needs to have
Hmm.
those kind of soft skills. No,
Yeah.
no. Supply chain management is a completely people's job.
Okay.
You are interacting with so many people, right?
Hmm.
I'll give you a very small example. Typically in industries, you have something called a sales and operations cycle, right?
Okay.
SNOP cycle, which is a
Hmm.
monthly cycle where uh, uh, um, you are trying to predict how much you're going to sell,
Hmm.
and then you're trying to see how much of uh, uh, um, materials or how much can I produce to match that demand. Will I be
Okay.
able to cater to that demand? Am I going to produce more than what is asked? Am I going, probably almost always you'll not have the capacity to produce as much as the demand is. How do
Okay.
I do that, where you are going to sit with finance, you will sit with
Hmm.
sales, you'll sit with branding, you'll sit with the
Correct.
trade team, you'll sit with, and of course your entire planning team, a demand
Correct.
planner, a supply planner, a production planner. These people
Hmm.
will sit together, try to arrive at a consensus plan. I'm using technical terms just to put it
Correct.
very clearly, like you're
Hmm.
trying to bring up a consensus plan. This is what I will be selling in the next 12-24 months.
Right.
What do I do to ensure that I
Hmm.
can sell that much, which means I need to have that much of supply. I don't think this is something that can be done without good stakeholder management, good interpersonal skills. You can't do this.
Correct.
You will
Correct.
almost always be in a position where you have to convince the other person. You
Okay.
you will have to collaborate. You can't work in isolation.
Hmm.
No, it's,
Okay.
if that is what people understand, it's a
Yeah.
misnomer. I mean,
Hmm.
you need to have excellent people skills.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let's take a few questions. Okay. What are the kind of work-life balance that's there, the quality of work, job satisfaction based on these factors? Could you please tell us why we should do an MBA in operations management or become supply chain consultant? And also the salary benefits, by the way. Yeah.
Right.
So
So, okay, to
yeah.
the second part of
Yeah,
question, I
overall.
think we have
Yeah.
already answered that.
Ha,
Why
correct.
supply chain?
Hmm.
But work-life balance.
Hmm.
I'll probably get a lot of hate for this, but
Ha.
uh, see, if you're in consulting,
Ha.
uh, you will tend to have long hours,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Whether it's supply chain consulting or any other consulting, it's
Hmm.
consulting.
Yeah.
Um, you will have long hours.
Hmm.
Uh, Work-life balance is a, see, as a concept, as work life balance, it's up to you what is important, right?
Correct. Yeah.
if you want a 8 9 10 hour job, consulting is probably not the place, right?
Okay.
You will have to put in extra hours, but see, understand, it's almost always a trade off. And
Okay.
MBA, you will realize everything in life is a trade off.
Okay.
This is something that MBA will really teach you well.
Hmm.
If you're putting in those many hours,
Hmm.
your learning is an exponential learning. This is not
Hmm.
what people will probably learn in industry in 5 years. You will probably do
Hmm.
that in a couple of years, right? Your learning is much faster.
Hmm.
You are exposed to multiple industries. Okay. Today you're working on a project on, say, CPG, which is basically FMCG. Tomorrow you might be working on something which is on pharma, and after
Hmm.
that you'll be working probably on automobiles.
Hmm.
Supply chain as a concept cuts across industries. It's a
Okay.
functional understanding that you need to have.
Okay.
This,
Okay.
of course, every industry will have its nuances, but
Hmm.
conceptually, functionally, it is there will be a strong foundation which is cutting across the industries.
So are you saying it's industry agnostic? It is the
Fairly,
knowledge. Okay.
fairly
Okay.
industry
Okay.
agnostic. So,
Okay.
um, for you to learn those at a rapid pace, you will put in those many number of hours,
Hmm.
which means, in the colloquial sense of words, work life balance is going to be
Hmm.
slightly impacted. But
Okay. Hmm.
if you are somebody who is looking for that kind of a life and is
Hmm.
ambitious enough, I think you will enjoy that.
Okay.
That shouldn't be a problem, to be honest. And
Correct. Yeah.
that is what consulting is, right? You need to put in extra number of hours, but then the rewards are really good. You learn much faster, you
Hmm.
understand multiple businesses, you will get to know the best cutting edge knowledge, processes, technology which is out there, because first you need to know, so that only you can implement for your clients,
Rest.
right?
Rest.
So you will
Hmm.
almost always be ahead of the curve. And yes, salary wise as well, you will be earning a
Yeah.
little more
Hmm.
than what your peers are going to be doing at in the industry.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you gain a
As a
lot, but
supply
then
chain consultant, you're
yes,
saying.
you
Yeah.
gain a
Okay.
lot,
Yeah.
but then
Hmm. But of
the
course,
ask
yeah.
is going to
Hmm.
be the number of hours.
Correct. Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm. But tell me, why is supply chain consulting the most sought after in within supply chain management?
it kind okay. So
Is
the
it is it like how management consulting? Is it like how consulting is in generic in the? Is that
yeah,
the
so
same reason?
correct. So two aspects to this
Hmm.
question, right?
Yeah.
um Consulting almost always is going to be most sought after
Okay.
roles.
Hmm.
I'm making a very general statement here.
Hmm.
Almost
Hmm.
everybody will have their own preference, so it's
Okay.
not that this is true for everyone.
Hmm.
But typically, if you see in B schools as well,
Hmm.
will consulting firms or consulting jobs will have a slightly more preference than the industry,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
People would want to get into that because of the things that I just mentioned. The
Hmm.
second part of the answer, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you get better perks. There is going to be some level of traveling. There is going to be a lot of learning. Very fast paced learning as well.
Okay.
You will learn across different industries. Of course,
Hmm.
you will become an expert over the period of time, but you will have far more exposure than
Okay.
when you are in with a single firm with a particular piece of the thing that you're doing. Now, you must be
Okay.
wondering, when
Hmm.
I said supply chain consulting projects can run into a year or two as well, you might be saying this is similar to industry.
Hmm.
It is, but I would say it's a yes and a no.
Okay.
Yes, you are working on one project, you're working with one client, but typically that client, if it's such a long project, it's probably going to be a global company, which
Okay.
means you will be working with different countries or different regions, which
Hmm.
means you will be learning a lot of nuances which is going to be that region specific, which means your learning is actually much more than you would be in a role in 2 years in a particular firm. Point number
Okay.
one. Point
Yeah.
number two, you just don't do a project in consulting. Almost
Hmm.
never. You will have
Okay.
a plus one, a plus two, a plus three kind of things. That's why those many number of hours, which means
Huh. Huh.
you need to be working on different proposals so that we sell more to the different clients.
So are you saying you're working on multiple projects?
So there is
Ev-
going to be one or
huh.
two project. Project
Okay.
is something that you work with the client, or
Hmm.
you will work with client on other things as well, but
Hmm.
you're being stuffed on a particular
Okay.
project. But
Okay.
simultaneously you will be doing a lot of other activities,
Okay.
right? So for
Hmm.
example, if you have to sell to a particular other client,
Hmm.
I know the partner and senior manager is going to do the sales, but he will require a team to
Hmm.
bring up an entire solution, which is going something that we'll use to pitch. We'll have
Hmm.
to create that deck, for which you need to understand the business of the client,
Okay.
at least at a high level. You need to
Hmm.
understand that industry.
Hmm.
So if you even if you're working on a project with FMCG, the
Hmm.
proposal might be for life sciences or
Hmm.
pharma, which means you need to understand the pharma industry as well if you have to do
Correct.
that.
Correct.
Plus you will be working on different assets. So uh, something that you learned, or something that you understood, something that you have with different experiences, a team of 3 4 5 people would come together, put uh, or create an accelerator or asset, so that next time a problem similar comes,
Hmm.
rather than taking 6 months to solve, because
Hmm.
of this asset, you can probably do it in 3,
Okay.
right? So that is
Hmm.
also a
Got it.
very very good exposure that you'll have.
Right, right. You said that it has gained a lot of impetus in the uh, past few years. So, how has the supply chain as a function changed in the past couple of years? What is the future? Along with how much of AI and machine learning is part of supply chain? Of course, it is, but yeah, how much of it is impacting it directly? And also the job profiles within supply chain management, how much of that is changing, and what would be the future, say in the next 5 or 10 years? How do you see it?
Okay, okay.
Hmm.
um I kind of just touched based upon the second part of the question that you asked, right? So
Huh.
um supply chain is no longer the supply chain of the 80s and 90s, right?
Correct, yeah.
There is a lot of invent and focus on technology that's coming in. So your jobs will become more and more understanding of the technology to improve, streamline, increase the efficiencies of your processes, right? um, yes, you will almost always have to have basic functional understanding, but only functional understanding will not cut it. You will have to see how can technology improve, or sit on top of the foundation of your functional knowledge to help your clients, right? uh, this is one piece.
Hmm.
Even if you are on the client side of things,
Hmm.
the big companies are trying to implement more and more technology to improve their function, which
Okay.
means you will also have to upgrade yourself if you want to stay employed with that, right? You can't
Correct.
say that I will work the way I used to work 10 years back. No,
Hmm.
you will have to upgrade yourself with that as well.
Okay.
Having said that,
Hmm.
um, supply chain has got a lot of impetus after COVID, because we've started realizing how much of a problem was it having the concept of having only lean supply chains. When I say
Hmm.
lean supply chains, basically just keeping enough so that you don't have a lot of inventory, which means you don't hold a lot of cash. It's only when you sell you get money, right? If you're just holding inventory, you're holding stockpiles of,
Oh,
it's as
fine.
good as cash, which
Correct.
unless and until you don't sell, you'll not get money, which
Hmm.
means you can't rotate. You If you don't get money, you can't buy, which means you can't sell again. That
Yeah.
rotation of cash is very important. Now, in order to solve this, we had this concept of lean supply chain, which means
Hmm.
you have only enough
Enough
to keep
to.
it.
Hmm.
But now, suddenly, with COVID coming in and supply chain getting fully disrupted, you just realize that lean will not cut it if a disaster happens again,
Hmm.
which means you need to have a resilient supply chain,
Correct.
which means if there are disruptions, I should be able to cater to keep supplying,
Hmm.
keep servicing my demand of the
Hmm.
customers
Hmm.
without impacting my service levels, which means
Hmm.
I can't say that, okay, I'm going to go out of stock
Hmm.
and not sell, somebody else will. Or if it is going to be life saving kind of
Hmm.
things, you just can't say that you can't supply it. There is lives
Hmm.
at stake. So basically the point I'm trying to make is supply chain has kind of started evolving towards that, and they have
Hmm.
started realizing the importance of making it resilient. Now,
Okay.
making it resilient does not mean I just stock more inventory and then I do, which means you're
Hmm.
impacting your finances then.
Correct.
It cannot be that way, right? So you need to
Hmm.
find ways to improve your resilience. At the same time, don't take a hit on your finances,
Correct.
which means a lot of technology, which helps you
Hmm.
give more and more real time alerts that, okay, this is in transit. There is going to be a problem. I'm going to get my supply out there on this particular date. You need to
Hmm.
have more and more predictions which are running in.
Correct.
You go more and more back tracing it, that okay, if I'm going to need to supply at that particular date, which means I need
Hmm.
to have my manufacturing done this, which
Correct.
means to I need to do my procurement this
Hmm.
was all there, but this is getting a lot more focus.
Not
You are
wrong.
putting in a lot of AI and
Hmm.
ML to do
Hmm.
a lot of decision analysis
Okay.
to improve
Hmm.
this entire piece.
Hmm.
So yes, there is a lot of technology bent which is coming in. There is a these AIs and MLs of the world which will help you improve this, which will make your supply chain more efficient and resilient.
Okay. 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 This one, let's take one last question. I am a Blue Yonder TMS consultant
Okay.
now for almost 2 years.
Okay.
How will an MBA in supply chain help?
It depends on what work you've done. I know when you are a
Mm.
Blue Yonder consultant, you
Yeah.
are basically working with the clients, help them
Mm.
implement this Blue Yonder solution, right? Once you do an MBA, um, you get a grasp, or rather an appreciation of the entire supply chain. Today
Mm.
you're working on TMS, basically transport management system. Somebody asked on fulfillment, right? So this is
Mm.
what typically you do. But for you to get an appreciation and understanding of things before and after this in the value chain, an MBA will really really help.
Okay.
um, and rather, with you having a lot of understanding of transportation, you will be able to extract more from your MBA, right?
Right.
When you do an MBA, you will not just do operations and supply chain, right? Even if you're
Mm.
specializing in that, you will understand marketing, you
Right.
will understand finance, you
Mm.
will understand technology, you will understand HR, all those kind of things, right? For
Mm.
you to understand how a business works,
Mm.
that is where an MBA will bring in a lot of benefit to you.
Okay.
With you having a deep expertise, or relatively deeper expertise than your peers in your MBA on one particular piece, you
Mm.
will be able to tie the other things much better to the supply chain aspect,
Right.
right? And when I'm talking about operations, your horizons will kind of widen, your understanding of this will also widen. So when,
Mm.
even if you go to a similar job in the future, when you're advising your client, it's not just going to be TMS specific. When he's coming with
Correct.
a pain point, you're not
Yeah.
bringing a solution to that pain point, you're trying to bring
Mm.
a solution which is a little wider, which helps
Right.
them solve their problem in a much more effective way,
Correct.
right? It sounds a
Mm.
lot of gyan, but
Yeah.
I have seen this in practice,
Okay.
right? It
Okay.
helps you, because when you're thinking of something, you're not just going to give a point solution to that, you're
Right.
trying to build a solution which helps throughout, right?
Mm. Okay.
So
Okay.
it helps.
Yeah. Can you tell us a typical day for you as a supply chain consultant? Like average, of course, every day must be different, but typical day generally, the first half of the day and the second half.
So typically, what the way supply chain consultants are
Hmm.
working is,
Hmm.
um, I wouldn't say a typical day, but the
Hmm.
kind of typical work that you do, it will
Hmm.
make a lot more sense, because day on day basis it can be very very different. So I will not be able to give you an appreciation of the work that we do,
Hmm. Hmm.
but you will sit with the client to understand their problem, which
Hmm.
means to figure out, they will come up with a pain point.
Hmm.
That pain point can be very very pointed, but what you need to understand is go a level or couple of levels deeper to understand what is the lacuna in the process or in the system, right? So from pain point to actual requirement, that journey, when you're sitting with
Hmm.
the client, unearthing more and more issues, that is something that you do, right?
Okay.
To finally understand, what do I need to do so to solve it.
Hmm.
For that, problem identification is very important, and problem is almost never going to be what the client says, it is going to be something deeper. So
Hmm.
problem identification And once you have identified assessment, okay, this is the problem which is there. If I have to solve this, I know a solution, but how much time will it take? How much effort
Mm.
will it take? How many
Yeah.
people do I need to deploy on this? Right.
Mm.
So from rec- uh, pain point to problem identification to a potential solution, right? Once you have done that, then you start with the design. How do I design that solution,
Okay.
right? To
Mm.
then the actual implementation, and
Mm.
then of course the training, the handover,
Correct. Yeah. Okay.
right?
Okay. Yeah. So before we wrap up, the last question, and that's, can you give us a few key points or crucial tips on profile building?
One generic statement that I'll make
Yeah.
is, in order to improve your CV,
Huh.
um, first know what's there in your CV.
Mm.
And when you're trying to create a CV, you might have a lot of points.
Mm.
For every point, create a half page answer, right, or a
Okay.
half page description, and
Yeah.
then start crystallizing it into a single line, right?
Okay.
So I know this does not directly answer your profile building, but
Mm.
it really will add a lot of richness to an existing profile. It
Okay.
will help you answer the questions a lot better, right?
Mm.
So first, whatever you have, make sure
Yeah.
that you extract the most out of what is there,
Correct.
right? Your answers will be much more sharper, much more
Mm.
pointed, and putting across exactly what the you want to put across, what the other person wants to hear, right?
Yes.
That is first. Second,
Correct.
once you have that kind of things and now you want to enhance it, take up internships.
Yeah.
uh, Having experience, there is nothing more like it. So if you
Correct.
can, please do that. If
Mm.
you can't, uh, take up extra things on your work, right? Wherever you're working, if you're working with a firm and there's a job role which is around that,
Mm.
try and take a little small tasks here and there which helps you appreciate the business a little more, right?
Mm.
When they are looking for an MBA aspirant, they are looking for someone who can not just do his job well. Of course, that is like the bare minimum. You have to do it. But what more can you do? What more can or understanding do you have? Right. So
Mm.
when you take up these
Yeah.
small things, it helps.
Okay.
Third,
Yeah.
you can take up courses, which
Mm.
helps.
Mm.
But when you're taking up the courses, make sure that you do justice to those courses, right? Just don't take for the sake of it.
Mm.
Third, you can take up positions of responsibilities in terms of volunteering or NGOs or anything of that sort, which helps you showcase that you can handle a responsibility as well. So
Mm.
there are only so many sections in a CV, right? You'll have workex, you'll have ACADS. ACADS
Mm.
are done. You can anyway
Yeah.
can't do anything about it.
Correct. Yeah.
Work experience, you can
Mm.
add a lot of things to it.
Mm.
Then you will have something called as co-curricular activities or something like that,
Yeah.
which you'll
Mm.
anyway build during your MBA and
Correct.
whatever you could have done during your acads. Then you
Yeah.
have positions of responsibilities in which you can add a
Mm.
more things. You If you have internships, that is also going to be one more thing. And
Mm.
finally is going to be extracurrics.
Yeah.
So if you have some hobbies, passions, or things of that sort, make
Mm.
sure that you can talk about it as well,
Correct.
meaningfully, right?
Meaningfully.
I
Yeah.
I read books. Okay,
Yeah.
what did you get out of the book that you last read?
Yeah.
You can't just
Correct.
do nothing
Exactly.
about it, right?
Yeah.
Just you
Yeah.
can't say that I'm reading. So
Mm. Mm.
that's why I'm saying, while you can build a profile with adding a lot of things, add things that you can really are passionate about or you can really talk about, right?
Mm.
A stronger profile will always be something which is much more thorough than something which has a lot of things,
Okay.
right?
Is
So
there any book on supply chain management, a fun read for supply
the
chain and
goal,
to understand? Huh?
there is a book called
The
the
goal.
goal, if I'm
Okay.
not wrong, by
Okay.
Goldrat. I'm forgetting his first name, but Goldrat is his
Okay.
surname. But this
Okay.
guy is an
Hmm.
Israeli guy, which the reason I'm giving that
Huh.
context is they didn't have a lot of resources. So the whole idea of mapping out a process
Hmm.
and identifying bottlenecks
Correct.
and debottlenecking your entire process, you
Yeah.
will learn this entire thing from this book. So it's a story
Hmm.
explaining the entire process.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
must
Yeah,
read, I would
yeah.
say.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Eli Goldratt, somebody's
Yeah.
put it. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. So that's all we have time for this session. And before we wrap up, I would like to give my special thanks to Jinay and Nagori. Thank you so much for an interesting and such an informative session on supply chain management, supply chain consulting, as well as operations. Thank you so much.